Life at work can feel dull, transactional, and exhausting. Fortunately, it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, our work can be turned into a vehicle for transforming how we relate and connect with others while making other areas of our lives feel bright, inspired, and nourishing. For this minisode, I'm bringing back innovation and leadership development expert Chris Baer to discuss working with love, a key foundation of his leadership development work through his Mandala Institute. In this conversation, we unpack how love is not soft or about little pink hearts, but a powerful and demanding force that helps us grow and engage more deeply with our teams and other people in our lives. Developing the inner skill of working with love will transform your life at work and elsewhere. If you're looking for inspiration to reimagine a process of transformation to make work and other areas of your life feel bright, inspired, and connected, this conversation is for you. If you want to hear more about Chris's backstory and thoughts about developing inner skills for outer results, check out our conversation in episode 14. You can find Mandala Institute online at mandala.institute. Now let's get into the conversation. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Ezekiel, how are you?
It's so good to have you back.
Yeah, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we talked back in episode 14. And so there's been a few changes. Back then, you were working with AI and doing some consulting. So, what's the update? What's going on now?
Well, I think it's been a year. I left the consulting world happily, and I have taken the Mandala, which was a consultancy, and turned it into an institute. So I'm working now as the founder of Mandala Institute, and it
Yeah.
helps build more relational leadership skills in managers so they can have better cultures, more well-being, higher performance, and growth.
So, last time we spoke, we touched on this toward the end of the conversation, I believe. And what we touched on, you also happened to have a phrase about that in your email signature. So, what's that phrase in your email signature?
Work with love.
That's right. So I just wanted to record a conversation just dialed into that. So this is going to be a shorter episode. It's not going to be long form, but let's talk about it. So work with love. What does that mean in your work to you?
Yeah, it's been the question. I think it kind of surfaced about, I don't know, 5 years ago, maybe a little bit more. I was working in my corporate role at Marriott, and I was just deeply considering what matters in,
Mm,
in work and in life, and that we are all often through the context of work, we're together. It's probably the biggest shared medium of at least the modern age is work. And I think that the more I've thought about it, that what's been really missing in the last, I don't know, a couple decades is this role of
mm,
love. Like, how can we bring love to the work we do, but also work with the power of love, right? Which is this
mm.
all-encompassing thing that we think we don't know what it is exactly, but we know it's present. We certainly know it when we see it or when we feel it, and it's so vital to not only human relationships, but I'd say it's a vital part of just being conscious.
What might that look like at work? Like paint me a picture if there's an instance, a story of where working with love showed up in a project or in a workplace.
Sure. I mean, again, it's one of those things that people often say, like about art, like, I'll know it when I see it. You
Hmm.
know it when you see it. I think it can show up is the kinds of actions, behaviors, or acts that far transcend anything that's just a transactional part of the job. I had one colleague who, when I think we experienced the hurricane down in Louisiana, was a senior executive at the company and made a point to reach out and call as many people as he could on the team who were affected, regardless of their level. That looks like love to me.
Yeah.
But on a smaller note, it can simply be welcoming people into a space where they feel supported and they can show up with all of their intrinsic brightness, and not just intellectual brightness, but their
Mhm.
energetic brightness.
Yeah. So, Chris, I'll share. I was at a spiritual retreat over the summer.
Whereabouts?
Um, yeah, so I went, well, I was in the mid Atlantic with some very nice people. And this work with love, like that phrase, really came up for me very strongly.
Mm,
Well, it was work with love and understanding. And so
mm,
I've been sitting with that
mm.
and integrating that and trying it on for size.
What's
And
coming up?
so,
Yeah.
yeah, so what I'm noticing so far is there are moments where inevitably work has a charge where there's anxiety or fear or perhaps like annoyance at some friction that I might be having with somebody. And so I've tried this exercise of trying to shift to working with love. And I think what's that has been feeling for me is that it's increasing. So it's decreasing fear, anxiety, and other things that may
Mm,
be present. And it's increasing a sense of enjoyment. And I think it's also energizing the sense of care that I put into making things, which is kind of intrinsic to my character, but I think it's powering that in a more conscious, in a more deliberate way. So it's
mhm,
been a nice way to enjoy work. So in a way, it's I mean, it's partially like self-serving because it's my enjoyment.
mhm, mhm,
And I don't know, it's kind of early on to see how that's rippling out to other people, but I think too in my interactions with other people, there's a little bit of a different energy there when I'm tuning into the work with love mantra, right?
You
Yes.
you said a couple of interesting
Mhm.
things that just kind of, got me thinking too.
Mhm.
Um, which is one, a lot of the work we do as people, since we're social creatures, is us working together, and those are really, clear opportunities to be able to
Mhm.
extend positive regard and appreciative inquiry and all these kind of good ways of showing up and being present with people in a situation. But we can also bring love to how we cut carrots and making making food for dinner, right? Which is also a kind of work, right?
Mhm.
And in that sense, working with love is honoring the present moment, and just
Yeah.
being really grateful for where we find ourselves in this moment, our ability to even interact in this way with these things. So I think there's ample opportunity to reflect and sort of contemplate on how to bring more love into your work.
Yeah. So I was recently recording with a guest. Her name is Karen Faith. And so we touched on this also toward the end of the conversation. Funny, huh? And so we're having the discussion that, from her perspective, she was saying, like, well, first of all, love is not little pink hearts, that love is very powerful energy. And there's a lot there to unpack. And in the conversation, we also talked about boundaries, and it wasn't necessarily connected to working with love specifically as a topic, but it was connected around like empathy and really getting to know people and customers and so forth.
Hmm.
So yeah, tell me about love energy, because I think some people might think that it is little squishy and pink hearts and little Valentine candy. But how does it show up in work? I think it also requires boundaries and handling, challenging moments and
Hmm.
people who are having challenges or people who are challenging. What comes up for you if you think
Hmm.
about those type of instances?
Wow, you're asking a number of really good questions and pointing out some interesting thoughts. I think, for starters, I think we do have this kind of branded version of what love looks like. And we think about,
Mhm.
initially, we'll think about romance or desire, or we might even think about, as you said, like even a branded aesthetic of how we've made love in the West, which is these pink hearts. And
Mhm.
maybe it can even come across as weak, oh, it's soft, it's easy. My experience with love has been the opposite. It is a very demanding force. It will ask you to
Mhm.
step into spaces that you don't think you can.
Mhm.
It'll break your heart in ways that seem like you can't recover. And this isn't just the romantic breakup, but it can be even as we, even fall in love with some part of ourself or the work that we do or something. And as we have to let go of that, it can
Mhm.
be very, very uncomfortable as we're learning. And then somehow we grow through those experiences. So love is the only force that is both demanding and in its creative destruction actually grows you in the process. You get kind of bigger the more you exercise it, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And there's I have a kind of an idea of on like a pathway for it, which is like, okay, well, I want to cultivate this more.
Hmm.
And often just the first step is actually becoming more present and,
Yeah.
cultivating our attention and how we make a choice in a moment and getting much more intentional about becoming present. As we do that, we can build other things in like trust and self-awareness, discernment and courage. And ultimately, we end up in this place of grace where we can hold the voltage that love asks of us, which
Hmm.
is to hold two truths that seem that they don't go together, or to, as you mentioned earlier, to be able to afford kindness to someone who is never going to reciprocate it. Those are some things that I think that when we are in our best and working with love tend to show up.
Yeah. Well, I remember last year being on a call where I was responding to a report about here in South Florida, a report related to workforce preparedness.
Mm,
And the report itself, so this is a report, right? So this has been like analyzed and surveys and interviews and so forth. And so the report is saying, is reporting that they're finding much of the workforce, particularly the juniors in the people early on in their careers, really lacking soft skills. Words of the report. So I bring this up. I mean, in a community call, and you could see just people just get tense, like on camera. You could see like the muscles contracting and the faces and like the eyes going wide, and just people being super uncomfortable because the discussion was around tech skills, and as I do, I often have to bring up unpopular topics.
of course.
So the conversation, it's usually that leads to difficult conversations. I do this to myself, but I just it's just the thing that you got to do. And people got really tense, and then they didn't know how to handle this. They were very uncomfortable, and so somebody came up with some term like enterprise, being enterprise ready. And I was like, okay, you can call it what you want, but there's still, this report is pointing out a deficiency that needs to be addressed. Regardless what you can call it, purple clouds, that doesn't matter to me. We have to address this. And as you might surmise, that conversation didn't really go anywhere. So soft skills, so working with love, that also I think might bring up the association with soft skills, and how
Mhm.
people relate to that term, possibly in the way that I'm describing, possibly in some other ways. How do you navigate around that, or what's
Mm.
the different perspective that you offer people, that you invite people to take?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think for, as you know, like for a number of years, I've worked in leading leadership development programs for a lot of people at all
Mhm.
levels. And yeah, I don't think it's a secret that the higher you go in a systemic structure, like a structure or an organization, the more relational your skills need to become, and less
Mhm.
functional in terms of, you have your business degree for that or your tech skills for that. It's the big irony, particularly in tech for people, which is a lot of people go into tech to put hands on keyboards. They do not
Mhm.
have to associate and work with people
Mhm.
in 3D, right? And then all of a sudden, they're good at what they do. Now they're promoted. Now they have a team. Well, wait a minute, they weren't even, that wasn't what they even originally signed up for, managing people.
Yeah.
They wanted to write code. So it's like this bait and switch as you start to grow.
Mhm.
So the skills are what we call soft skills. I call relational skills.
Mm.
And I was rereading an article by David Brooks in the New York Times around what he cites to be these things called thematic desires.
Mhm. Mhm.
And this is the very, very deeply held, almost biological desire to be seen, to be respected, and frankly, just to be known to exist, right? So we have this need to hear our name or to be recognized. It's recognition, that's the other one. And it's a profound, almost biological, probably at this low level, need for people of having the sense of belonging. And this belonging
Mhm.
means recognition and such. So if we know that this is a very deep human, nearly universal, but I don't want to go that far, but because there's always exceptions, but it's quite pervasive. If we know that that is the root of how human belonging and motivation thus springs from that, then I think it should be completely understandable for most leaders that they need to really spend a lot more time understanding how their relational skills work
Mm-hmm.
so that they can show up with their best. And in this case, the best is love. It is there is nothing more powerful, there is nothing better, there's nothing more
Mm-hmm.
worthy to work for.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. I mean, you could say money or power. Nope. Love. Love is it. That's the one. It's the one that all things will return to one day. And it's what we
Yeah.
all deeply want is to feel love and to be loved.
Yeah. It's funny in YouTube, sometimes, the algorithm serves me up some things. And among those things is there's this psychologist or psychiatrist, I don't know. He puts a video where he cobbles together really famous people, like the rich and famous, telling stories of like misery, of like how miserable they are.
That's so
And it's just
awesome.
such a great reminder. It's like, okay, yes, so this it's that's not where the really good stuff in life is found. I mean, it's nice to have money. It gives you choices and flexibility.
Mhm.
There's to a point, but it's not the source of the good stuff that we're talking about right here. So related to all of this, to working with love, there are I just remember in my own journey, I came up working in nonprofit and government, serving community, but I'm also thinking about caretaking professions like health, in health and nurses and so forth. And something that I observed over time was sometimes people have porous boundaries, and there's some sense of love. There's some association of being loving also means that, I kind of overgive, I overdo, or sometimes like somebody it's kind of treated like a doormat. And unfortunately there's some people that confuse kindness for weakness.
Mhm.
Do you have any thoughts around working with love, but also having like healthy boundaries and knowing how to activate those boundaries, like when and where?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, what an amazing question. Yeah, love doesn't mean weakness. Love actually means strength. And
Yeah.
it means looking for an inner kind of strength that does include boundaries. It does include this thing called discernment, which is knowing how to hold the context and nuance of information that comes your way and knowing what then to do with it. And this is, of course, when courage is then required after, as if you actually discover the path that you need to take, what to do. I'd say, like, for the training wheels version of it, I mean, because there's such a way that the word love is perceived and that it has a existing kind of context and valence and as you pointed out earlier, it may sound soft to some people or romantic to others. um, the example that comes up is when we co-founded Sunstone Therapies. My original co-founders and I, we were working on what would a culture of love look like in the medical establishment.
Mm,
And we came to these two words, which were that the deepest held value of the company would be love and rigor. And the
mm,
rigor piece was this guarantee to the world that we wouldn't be delivering softness, that we would be delivering the hard goods required for real healing to happen. And that includes boundaries. And I think
mhm,
there's a lot of room. The higher the rate of complexity, the more we need to have discernment and boundaries in place, so that we just don't get run over or find ourselves in interactions that we don't fully understand, or we're bringing parts of ourselves forward that we
mhm.
don't fully understand.
Yeah. So, well, this is intended to be a short conversation, so I just want to make a pass at one more thing, and maybe we
Sure,
can come back and
we could
talk some
talk
more
all day
about this.
about you and I could talk all
We
day. Yeah,
we could do a 3 hour podcast, but this is a
yeah,
mini-sode. And the last thing I'd like to just get your thoughts on is, let me frame it first. when Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, I know it's like overdone. Everybody quotes Apple and Steve Jobs, but when he talks about doing something insanely great, that really resonates with me, like deep inside, because there is something about, and he also speaks about this, when we work with a great deal of care to make something really awesome for somebody. So it's almost like making a gift for somebody else, or in business you might call it an offering, right? What are your offerings? Well, we have these models or these things. Tell me about working with love and creative choices in our offer. I mean, you were talking about culture too, but with your design hat on, as a designer and artist that you are, very seasoned at making creative choices. So tell me about working with love. How does that shape creative choices, and maybe what's the impact
Hmm.
at the
Hmm.
other end for the
Yeah.
consumer and the market, and maybe the bottom line?
Yeah. I mean, in working in the coaching space, I like to say, when people feel stuck, right faculty for right job, which is,
Mm-hmm.
this thing's really good up here for like doing
Mm-hmm.
multiplication and getting us from point A to point B and all that. And then this area in here is really good for
Or
wisdom. And
hearts,
yep, the heart here.
right?
It's like,
So the head is for reasoning, is for the listeners.
oh
Just
yeah, sorry. I'm
because
pointing to
we're
my, yeah, I'm pointing
yeah,
to my head, and then
yeah.
I'm pointing to the heart for
Mm-hmm.
the other one. And having them work in unison is honestly what's missing most of all, and
Mm-hmm.
knowing which one to use for which, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that, from a creative lens, that stands out to me is this metaphor of, there's a point sometimes when we're really listening. We're
Mm-hmm.
similar to the bud of a flower that has been growing through the springtime. There becomes a moment when the bud can no longer stay the bud. It becomes
Mm-hmm.
utterly impossible to stay in that form. And now something impossible needs to happen, which is this incredible display of creativity
Mm-hmm.
through this flora is presented. It's presented to the universe. It's actually like, you look at flowers seem to be pointing to the sun, and it's almost as if they're reflecting back out to the universe, saying like, hey, I see you. I'm beautiful too, and so are you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think from a, you were asking, I think from a creative lens, that's the feeling I relate to. And when I say that love
Mm-hmm.
is demanding, it's that type of demanding. You are no longer permitted to stay in the bud.
Yeah.
You are asked, or even called forth, to take on a new impossible shape, and to do it with courage, and to do it with a way that is a pathway for other people, so that they don't also try to stay confined, especially when the mind says, be careful, be afraid,
Mm-hmm.
don't live that courageous life, because you could perish, when on the other side it's actually joy and freedom.
I lied. So one last question: as a customer and a
Mm,
consumer,
mm.
when you were, engaging with a service or a product or something, when can you tell that there were loving choices in the design or the delivery of what you're paying for?
Well, I mean, I have always, in the realm of experience design, I think
Mm-hmm.
what most experience designers go for, and experience design has the richest opportunity for this. It's the nexus
Mm-hmm.
of product design and spatial design, and how design unfurls through space and time. The thing that all designers seem to want to do in that case, to show love, is to surprise and delight people,
Mm-hmm.
which is to anticipate their needs, and not just their functional needs, but their emotional needs. So sometimes it might be as simple as opening up something, that a package that you got, and there might even just be a simple written message that really resonates with another part of you, that has nothing to do with that product whatsoever, but
Mm-hmm.
that you smile and you realize, oh my gosh, the people behind this really get it, and I'm in the right place here. That feels really good. It's the simple things, and it's often the little
Mm-hmm.
things,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily the big scaled things.
I mean, the magic is in the details, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And the details, you can only nail the details with a lot of love and care.
You really, they take time,
Yeah.
to be thoughtful. And I think business misses out a lot, because I think there's this asymmetric like value that you get when you put in that extra TLC. People, if they fall in love with your product and your brand, they're doing it because they feel that it's being telegraphed all the way through that value chain.
Absolutely. Chris,
So
thank you so much for this conversation today. Let's have another
yeah,
one soon.
yeah, man. I could talk to you all day, Ezekiel, and thank you so much for having me
Yeah.
once
Wait,
again.
and before we sign out,
Yeah.
why should people look you up and where can they find you?
Oh, yeah. Thanks. Well, that's easy. Mostly I'm on LinkedIn and I'm easy to find. My name is Chris Baer, and I'm the founder of the Mandala Institute. And you can find more about how to become a much better relational leader and to bring your team along there at mandala.institute.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
Thank you too. See you soon.